Hey everyone, welcome back to RJK English and Siddhartha Chapter 8. This is my page in RJK English. It's growing. I think we have about 150 to 170 subscribers now. On YouTube, we have about 75 subscribers. Please make sure to like and subscribe so that my videos can be seen more. I really appreciate providing this to you for free. I want you to learn, but that would really help me out. All right. Let's jump back into it. Siddhartha. So Siddhartha has now left the town where he was at, and he's wandering in the forest once again. So he's left his life. So he's become multiple things throughout this book. He became a samana, and then he left and became a merchant, and now he's back to wandering in the forest. So by the river. Siddhartha wandered into the forest, already far from town, and knew only one thing, that he could not go back, that the life he had lived for so many years, was past, tested, and drained to a degree of nausea. So the years he had lived were in the past, and he kind of combines this idea of them being in the past, but also they are active. They are past. That life is past. All that he tasted, all the taste of it, meaning the flavor, it's all drained out. Like in the song Terebina, says, Terebina besawari ratian. It means, without you, everything is tasteless. Beswad. So all the nights are tasteless without you. So in the same way, he's saying that all of life, the taste and all of that is drained out to the degree that he is nausea, that he is nauseous. To that degree, the songbird was dead. Its death, which he had dreamt about, was the bird of his own heart. Remember the songbird that Kamala owned. He was deeply entangled in samsara. He had drawn nausea and death to himself. He had drawn it to himself from all sides, like a sponge that absorbs water until it is full. He was full of ennui. This is a French word. I think ennuyant means boredom. I don't know exactly what it means, to tell you the truth, but it means exactly what he's saying now, where he kind of doesn't feel anything about life. He's full of misery, full of death. There was nothing left in the world that could attract him, that could give him pleasure or solace. He wished passionately for oblivion. That means he wishes to die. This is quite serious. Oblivion is nirvana, but not existing. He wished passionately for oblivion, to be at rest, to be dead. If only a flash of lightning would strike him. If only a tiger would come and eat him. If there were only some wine, some poison that would give him oblivion, that would make him forget, that would make him sleep and never awaken. Was there any kind of filth with which he had not besmirched himself, meaning he had taken on filth onto himself and muddied himself? Any sin and folly which he had not committed? Any stain upon his soul for which he alone had not been responsible? Was it then still possible to live? Was it possible to take in breath again and again, to breathe out, to feel hunger, to eat again, to sleep again, to lie with women again? Was this cycle not exhausted and finished for him? So one, we see an experience that if you have not experienced it, you may in the future. Many of us older people have experienced this, where we are disgusted with ourselves. For right or wrong, he might not be right in doing this. Okay, you have to judge that, but we have to listen to him. And also notice that his experience is just his experience. Remember, he thought of the songbird being dead. Is the songbird dead? No. In reality, Kamala let the songbird go and it's flying free. But he doesn't know that. He's only feeling his own life. A lot of times what we feel is not connected to what is real. It's what we're experiencing. We are disappointed with ourselves, so we think, how can we even live? Okay, that's the reality of it. That's what everybody experiences. But also notice, let's get into literary criticism, not just thinking about how to interpret it. There's two different levels of how we can deal with literature. One, we can make up our own interpretation and apply it to our life. That's valid. But there's also another that needs to be done, and that's figuring out what the author themselves is trying to, what they are trying to communicate. And notice what he goes back to. Where have you seen this word cycle before? Regarding karma, the cycle of rebirth, right? And we see Siddhartha going through this, going to something new, then tiring of it, then going to something new and tiring of it. And we go back to the wheel of rebirth. That's what that wheel of rebirth is. And in Buddhism and in the Upanishadic Hinduism, there's this idea that the world is a cycle. We keep being reborn, and it's useless. It's actually painful. And if you watch movies, you'll start to see this theme come up. If you read books, you'll start to see this theme come up. We feel it when we get older, when we've lived different versions of our life and we're like, oh my God, this again? Sometimes it makes you despair. Siddhartha reached the long river in the wood. The wood means the forest or the woods. Sometimes we call them the woods. The same river across which a ferryman had once taken him when he was still a young man and had gone from Gautama's town. Do you remember that? When the ferryman took him across the river? Well, now it seems like about 20 years have passed since then. And he thinks by being 40 years old or so that he is old. I am that age, and I sometimes feel old, but that's not really that old. He stopped at this river and stood hesitatingly on the bank. Stood hesitatingly. If you see that ly, that is an adverb. It is modifying the verb stood. Whereas an adjective modifies a noun, hesitatingly modifies a verb, and usually you can tell adverbs by this ly at the end. Hesitatingly. He stood hesitatingly on the bank. He doesn't know what he's going to do. Fatigue and hunger had weakened him. Why should he go any further? Where and for what purpose? Was there no more purpose? There was no more purpose. There was nothing more than a deep, painful longing to shake off this whole confused dream, to spit out this stale wine and make an end of this bitter, painful life. Are you starting to catch how we tell stories in English? And maybe in other languages do this too. We sometimes don't tell you that we're giving an analogy or a symbol. We just put it in the sentence. There was no more purpose. There was nothing more than a deep, painful longing to shake what off? This whole confused dream. It means shake off this life, but life like it is a confused dream, like he's dreaming and it's weird. To spit out this stale wine, he's referring to life. Life is like stale wine, like wine that has gone bad. It doesn't taste good anymore to him. To make an end of this bitter, painful life. There was a tree on the riverbank, a coconut tree. Siddhartha leaned against it, placed his arm around the trunk, and looked down into the green water which flowed beneath him. He looked down and was completely filled with a desire to let himself go and be submerged in the water. Let himself go, that is a reflexive verb. To let, he has to let something go. He's letting himself go, meaning letting himself drop into the water. And be submerged. Submerged means to go completely under the water. To be submerged in the water. Duba, if you know Urdu poetry. Duba, to go into the water. Dubna. A chilly emptiness in the water reflected the terrible emptiness in his soul. Yes, he was at the end. He really feels like he's at the end. There was nothing more for him but to efface himself. To efface something, if you have a picture and you smudge it, you've effaced it. If you have a statue and you kind of chip it and it breaks off a piece, that effaces it. He wants to efface himself, to destroy the unsuccessful structure of his life. Everything about him is unsuccessful. His structure is unsuccessful. He feels to throw it away, mocked at by the gods. He feels like the gods are looking at him and laughing. I have felt this. Sometimes when I'm living my life, or I have to go to a job that I don't like, sometimes I feel like God or the gods or other people are looking at me and laughing at me. Usually that's not the case. That was the deed which he longed for. That was the deed which he longed to commit, to destroy the form which he hated, the form of himself. Might the fishes devour him? This is how we talk when we say we're wishing for something. Might that I be destroyed. This is old talk. This is the way we used to talk. Might the fishes devour him? He's wishing for it. He's not saying maybe they will. He wants them to. Might the fishes devour him? This dog of a Siddhartha. He's a dog. This madman, this corrupted and rotting body, this sluggish and misused soul. Might the fishes and crocodiles devour him? Might the demons tear him to little pieces? Again, he's not saying maybe this will happen. He's wishing for it to happen. This is an old way that we used to talk, maybe 100 years ago. Might that blah, blah, blah. You'll see it in old versions of the Bible. I'm going to stop here. What he says here is, yes, he was at the end. There are two types of ends. One is death. That is the ultimate end, right? You're done. Maybe some people believe you will go to heaven, or you will even go to hell, or maybe that you're a ghost. But ultimately, we're all afraid of death because it is an end. But there's also a different type of death. There's a death to things that you've held on to. And it feels like you are dying. But you are not dying. A part of you is dying. In the idea of shamanism, which is very similar to some of these ideas, the shaman is literally torn apart by spirits. Now, I say literally, his spirit is torn apart, like his limbs are pulled off. He literally feels pain. He or she literally feels pain. And they're destroyed. They feel like they're destroyed. And then they're put back together by the spirits. Only by dying can we come to life. In Christian terms, we call this like salvation. Dying in order to come back to life. In Christian terms, Jesus died and then rose again. And he says, you also have to die to yourself. Well, I believe that Jesus was influenced by the Buddha. That's my personal belief. Because Buddhism came about 500 years before. And Buddha is saying this as well, that Siddhartha is not going to kill himself. If you think he is, he's not going to, because the book goes on. But he is going to die to himself. And we all have to face this. When we come to a point in our life where things aren't the way we wanted them to be, and we feel ashamed, we have to keep walking, and when we do, we die in some way. But then we realize we're still living, and that death is actually good. If you watch the movie, let me just put this on 1 second. If you watch the movie Jacob's Ladder, it's a horror movie where these beings are coming at him and terrorizing him. But there's a man that plays the angel in it. You don't know he's an angel, but he says sometimes when we feel like we're being pulled apart, it's actually angels purifying us. And we find out at the end of the movie, sorry, spoiler, that he's actually dead already. And that these beings that look like demons are helping pull away the bad parts of his life, pull away the things that attach him to the world. They're pulling these away so he can truly experience life. He realizes that those are angels, but he couldn't see that before because he was too scared. Why? Because you're hanging on to what you think you are. If I don't have this, I'll die. And that's what life teaches us, that when we let go, we don't really die. Or really, this is a better way of saying it, we learn what is us and what is not us. But you have to learn that, and that is why this world is so hard. And if maybe God or the gods created this, they created it that way. And we have to go through that. We can be compassionate with each other during that time. If you have a chance, I would really recommend listening to a podcast called The Midnight Miracle. It's with Dave Chappelle. And he's quite a crude person. He's also my favorite comedian and one of my favorite people ever. I think he's one of the greatest Americans. He's crude, but he's also so compassionate. And it's about life. And it's quite beautiful. He's with his friends Yassim Bey, whose name was Most Def, and also Talib Kweli. So Talib Kweli, I think it's Kweli or Kweli. I would recommend checking that out. That would go along with this. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Make sure to like and subscribe, and tell me how this is going. What are you learning from it? I want to hear from you. I want this to help you. All right. See me on RJK English. You see the name RJK English. See me on Facebook and ask me questions and I'll help you out with this. All right. See you later.